Forget plague, forget war. The single greatest threat to London in the summer of 1858 was its own success. It was a killer that didn't hide in the shadows. It flowed openly, a tide of filth that brought the most powerful empire on earth to its knees. For centuries, London had used the River Thames as its open sewer. But the booming Victorian population, coupled with a lethal new invention, the flush toilet, created a disaster no one foresaw. Every day, 300 tons of raw human waste, the solid output of 3 million people, was flushed directly into the city's heart. When the heatwave hit, the river itself became a venomous, stinking cesspool. Parliament was in session. Judges were on the bench. The smell was so overwhelming, so physically sickening, that the entire legal and political framework of the British Empire was on the verge of collapse. This is the story of the Great Stink and how the sheer horror of a smell finally forced London to modernize. To understand the crisis, you must first understand Victorian sanitation. Before the 1840s, waste went into leaky cesspits, dug beneath houses, foul yes, but mostly contained. The real, unintended disaster began with a genius. In the 1840s, the concept of hygiene was evolving. The rich began installing flush toilets, a technological marvel, but an Act of Parliament, passed in 1848, demanded cesspits be emptied and connected to the only logical outlet, the old storm drains leading straight to the Thames. The sewers had become superhighways for disease. The problem had a scientific champion, Dr. John Snow. While the establishment believed in the miasma theory that disease was spread by bad air or the smell itself, Dr. Snow meticulously tracked the 1854 cholera outbreak in Soho. His conclusion: the killer was in the water, specifically a contaminated pump on Broad Street. His work was revolutionary, but in 1858, his germ theory was still largely ignored. The ruling class only cared about the visible, undeniable threat, the stench. June 1858, the summer was exceptionally hot and dry. The River Thames, now reduced to a sluggish low-tide flow, baked in the sun. The effluent that had once flowed out to sea now merely coagulated on the muddy banks. The decomposition was total. The result was catastrophic. Contemporary accounts describe the smell as an unbearable blend of rotten eggs, sewage, putrefying meat, and a sickly, cloying sweetness. People began calling it the Great Stink. It permeated everything. Food tasted of it. Clothes smelled of it. The political crisis centered on the Palace of Westminster, which stood directly on the riverbank. Members of Parliament were forced to retreat, holding their noses. The curtains of the House of Commons were soaked in chloride of lime, a disinfectant. Sheets saturated with carbolic acid were hung in the windows. It did no good. Even the powerful Chancellor of the Exchequer, Benjamin Disraeli, was rendered helpless. He described the Thames as a Stygian pool, reeking with ineffable and unbearable horror. They couldn't ignore it anymore. The river was, quite literally, forcing their hand. Relief came in the form of a brilliant, persistent engineer named Sir Joseph Bazalgette. For years, he had warned the city of the coming catastrophe. For years, his plans for a new comprehensive sewer system were tied up in bureaucracy, funding battles, and the endless bickering of 11 separate London government bodies. Now fueled by the panic of the Great Stink, Parliament rushed through a bill in just 18 days. The Metropolitan Board of Works finally gave Bazalgette the green light and, critically, the money. Bazalgette's plan was audacious. It wasn't just fixing a few pipes, it was a complete overhaul. 100 miles of New Street sewers and 82 miles of massive main intercepting sewers, huge brick tunnels that would run parallel to the Thames, intercepting the raw sewage and carrying it east of the city. He didn't use a single right angle in his design, ensuring a constant, gravity-fed flow. Construction took over 16 years, cost £4.2 million, an astronomical sum for the time, and created one of the world's most impressive civil engineering feats. Bazalgette's system, completed in 1875, finally saved London. Bazalgette's system immediately solved the Great Stink, but it did more than just remove the smell. It drained the waterborne source of the disease. Within a decade, cholera was virtually eliminated from London. The smell, the miasma, hadn't been the killer, it had been the warning. Here is the irony of the Great Stink. For years, London refused to spend a single penny on an unseen threat, cholera, that killed tens of thousands. Yet when a terrible smelling convinced the political elite for a few hot weeks in 1858, they authorized the largest civil engineering project of the century. London was modernized, not by a sudden flash of scientific enlightenment, but by the irresistible democratic force of disgust. The legacy of Sir Joseph Bazalgette's tunnels remains, still largely in use today, a hidden, magnificent testament to what happens when we finally choose to solve the problems we can no longer stand to smell.